Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, Amanda Suffecool, good friend, Eye on the Target Radio host, Board of Directors member of the NRA, soon to have go from retirement to a job, maybe, but doing great work no matter where she goes. Amanda's joining us. Amanda, thank you for coming along.
Hey, thanks for having me. And it gives me a break on a Wednesday because otherwise I'm running a chainsaw all day. This way I'm like, I got to go shower.
There you go. We did not have a bullet yesterday. We did not have Polite Society on Monday. I want to explain to regular listeners, regular viewers what's going on. There was a loss in my family, and rather significant loss in my family, and I had to take a couple days to deal with ramifications of that. Hopefully we're going to be back on track. I will tell you right now, because of that loss, there will not be a show on Saturday at our normal 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So, and there may not be a show Friday. It all depends on scheduling. But I may go early, I may go late. We'll see what happens with Friday, but definitely no show Saturday. Amanda, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay.
And we're already getting check-ins. John Petrolino and Brent Amsden are checking in.
Well,
hello,
hey,
gentlemen.
guys.
So first thing I want to do, I want to get to a press release from the Second Amendment Foundation that hit today. New Jersey playing a game of chicken with the Supreme Court and Second Amendment. This is off AmmoLand story. Second Amendment Foundation and its partners in a challenge of New Jersey's sensitive places concealed carry statute have filed a response to the state's motion for a stay in the Third Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. Case is now known as Coons versus Platkin. Second Amendment Foundation is joined by Firearms Policy Coalition, Coalition of New Jersey Firearm Owners, New Jersey Second Amendment Society, and 4 private citizens. And my ability to talk still hasn't recovered. Earlier this month, U.S. District Judge Renee Marie Bum granted a preliminary injunction, and the state filed a motion to stay the order pending appeal. And this is a quote from our founder and executive vice president, Alan Gottlieb. The state is struggling with all its might in a stubborn effort to retain a literal stranglehold on the rights of New Jersey citizens. We're challenging the ban on legal carry in parks, on beaches, at recreation facilities, publicly owned museums and libraries, bars and restaurants where alcohol is served, entertainment facilities and airports before a TSA security, public transportation hubs, and presumptive ban on private property. Adam Kraut, who's our executive director, said the state is playing a game of chicken with the Supreme Court and the Second Amendment. His quote is, "The state is burdened with showing that carry restrictions are consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearms regulation, and we don't see how that is possible. The state has not provided any evidence of the founding area restrictions like it wants to enforce today, and is essentially trying to stall the inevitable for as long as possible." So the state filed. We've sent an answer. Now we just wait again for Judge Bum to say whether she's going to allow her stay to stand or whether she's going to withhold the stay pending appeal.
You know, the interesting part, Paul, is that our listeners are learning more and more and more about judicial terms as these cases go, because we are spending so much time talking about the Supreme Court case and then all of the cases leading up to it, and what does moot mean, and what does en banc mean, and what does a stay mean, and what is, what are all of these terms, what do they really mean? And I know our folks are like, I didn't go to law school for a reason. I don't want to have to know this stuff, but in the end, I think that the thing you got to pay attention to is we're winning. We're winning, and it's really twisting their tail. So, winning.
and we will. We will continue to win.
Mhm.
The two things I think we need to watch out for right now are any attempts to change the makeup of the Supreme Court, loading the Supreme Court, and we need to make darn sure that come not this November but next November that things go our way. We've got to, and I've already got strikes for this on YouTube, but how do I put this? We've got to win above the cheat, is all I can say.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. We have to engage as many active voters as we possibly can so that no matter what happens, we are above that.
Oh, I love this comment. Let me get one in from Gerald. Gerald says, people should be teaching their children because this will never stop. They have very deep pockets and taxpayer money.
Oh, he's not wrong. It's, we're fighting with our money and they're fighting with our money. That's the part that just kind of torques you, is that it's really easy for them to keep taking it to court because it's not their money they're spending.
You're absolutely right. It's state money, it's city, county money, and it's
No, it's your money and my money, and they run out of money, so then they make us give them more money.
yeah, and it's a bottomless well, because if they run out, especially on the state level, they just borrow. Federal level, if they run out, they borrow until they can't borrow, and they have to pass a new law to raise a debt limit. And yeah, it's
right. And then they tax you more and more and more and more.
So
did I say more?
Get involved and get more people involved. And if we can get freedom-loving people in charge of the government at all levels, this will stop.
Correct. And frankly, I'm going to tell you, I'm a perfect example of it's not that hard to take it over. It really isn't. Because if you've got a skosh of management experience or the ability to be persuasive, then you show up to the meetings, and as soon as you start to say stuff, then you're in charge.
You know what? That's absolutely true.
My radio partner, Rob Campbell, tells me to shut up and to stop volunteering. And he's like, when we go somewhere, I says, I just want to see how this works. He's like, I'm going to tape your mouth shut. Do not go in there. And then the next thing you know, you run it. And it's like, he's not.
Well, it's a competence thing, Amanda. And I don't want to blow your specific horn too much, but you are, along with my wife, you are two of the most competent people I've ever met in my life. And I'm not drawing the line men or women. You're two of the most competent people I've ever met, period. And if you express interest, I'd let you run Polite Society. I'd let you run the Bullet. But I know you've got a ton on your plate anyway, so
well, thank you. Thanks for the compliment, and your job is safe because no.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next story I've got here, and this is about the Texas, the Fifth Circuit, and one other Texas lawsuit where there was an injunction filed in the pistol brace case, and the injunction applied to just the people who were filing the lawsuits. Well, that happened to be Firearms Policy Coalition and the Second Amendment Foundation. And there's now questions whether the injunction goes to the members of SAF and the members of Firearms Policy Coalition. And I'll get into this Friday with Alex Uli on the legal edition of the Bullet. But the answer is probably. And Amanda, the filing deadline is today. If you're going to turn your pistol brace firearm into a short-barreled rifle.
You know, the interesting part is that there is so much misinformation out there, and that misinformation came from the ATF. that dental box said that all you have to do is take it apart. All you have to do is take the brace off of the gun and you're fine. Then later on, the ATF says, no, you have to destroy it. You have to make it so it doesn't go back on. If you want to leave it, then you have to apply for this tax stamp. And oh, by the way, we're going to waive the $200 fee. The interesting part is the ATF does not have the right to waive the fee. So even if they waive the fee, they legally can't waive the fee. So once again, it's ATF overreach.
Yep.
So I would think that someone who applies, not me because I'm not applying, I'm just going out there right now, that someone who has applied, who has standing, should then file a suit against them because it's misappropriation of money that was not theirs to give away. So in effect, they gifted everyone who applied for this a $200 gift. So that's my opinion. Then we get into the Sixth Circuit Court said that, well, first the Fifth Circuit Court said that the people who filed the lawsuit and Firearms Policy Coalition, because they asked for clarity, their members are now exempt from this 5/31 deadline. Then the Sixth Circuit Court clarified it and said that Second Amendment Foundation's members are exempt from the deadline. So now we've got two different courts saying that. So on top of all of the other things, and oh, by the way, Bruin saying that they shouldn't be doing this in the first place. So,
right.
So we think it's unconstitutional. We think then when they gifted the $200 tax stamp, then that is actually breaking the law, and it's financially responsibility. Then you look at all this. But the part I want to toss out there is that there are a lot of Second Amendment pundits who say you had to be a member of Firearms Policy Coalition because they're using it as a fundraising, an amazing fundraising thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so the pundits are saying you had to be a member of Firearms Policy Coalition prior to the lawsuit's interpretation being settled. Firearms Policy Coalition just came back and said they're going to take everybody's membership and reset it to January of 2022, I think. So they're going to change their database and put everybody's date to January 2022, so they won't be able to figure out who was and who wasn't a member as of that date. So anybody who joined in any time there. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and those moving pieces are pretty darned interesting right now. They're really pretty darn interesting right now.
Let me get a couple comments in here. We've got a lot of comments we've got to cover because we've triggered something here.
Okay.
Pun intended. Gerald says, I made the choice to order a new barrel and stock. It is now a rifle. And then he followed up with, their gift makes it really hard to sell. You can't give it away or leave it to your children. Speaking of the gift of the no $200 tax stamp.
Right.
And let me, another one I want to get up. Larry says, so when does a long-barreled pistol become a short-barreled rifle? And Amanda, you know what? That's a great question because it's like a 13-step evaluation you got to go through according to the ATF's website.
Right, and so many people bought these when they bought them, and they did their paperwork. It was, did they buy it as a pistol? Did they buy it as a rifle? Did they buy it as an other? So depending on the state that you live in, or lived in, or was in at the moment that you bought that, it could have been any of those, because I know that Connecticut bought theirs as others. Some are pistols, some are not. So it's going to be interesting. And then what happens to it? Most of Free America, they were not registered.
Yep.
So they didn't have to pick a persuasion. They didn't have to have a pronoun, right? They were whatever they were. And it was not a big deal. Now, all of a sudden, you have to select a pronoun for it. And if you select wrongly, It's a problem.
You again. I just my brain just went squirrel when you said pronouns. By the way, my personal pronoun is dude. So if you're referring to me, you go yo dude, and I'll answer. So and I call women dude. I call my bike dude. Yo dude, it's time to start. Don't give me this
Wait,
stuff
you call
anymore.
your dog dude.
Yeah.
So there you
Literally,
go.
my bigger dog's name is dude.
I
So
think we need to just everybody change their pronouns to rifle slash pistol or pistol slash rifle, right? There's our new pronoun on Twitter and everywhere else, right?
yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. I like it. I identify as a M1 Garand. There we go. Um,
Hey,
our next story. This one. I when you put this in show notes, I'm like, really? It's taken this
really?
long. A Parkland
5 years.
officer accused of failing to confront school shooter faces trial. This is from MSN.com. Jury selection is set to begin today in trial of a former school resource officer charged with felony child neglect for allegedly failing to confront the Parkland school shooter. By the way, that was the school shooting was on February 14th, 2018, and it's
5 years
taken him
ago.
this long to bring charges
Felony,
against the officer we
felony,
seen on video
yes.
turn around and run the other way.
Power behind a car. Felony child endangering, and it takes them 5 years. You know, and you and I talked about this a little bit before the show notes, and I made no promises because there are so many people who are like, well, you weren't there, you don't understand, you don't know. I do know. I'm
I
going to tell
wasn't
you.
there.
I wasn't there, but I'm going to tell you what I do know. And that is when you sign up for a job, whatever that job is, you do that job, and it is your job. And I know that I have in my career, when I thought a building was on fire, my job was to sweep through there and make sure that everyone that was in my level of responsibility, that I made sure I knew where they were and I went to get them. So I understand that, okay, nobody was shooting at me, but there is a level of responsibility that is built into certain jobs, and as you accept that job, that is that level of responsibility. And if you are not willing to take that level of responsibility, then do not take the job. It is that absolutely that cut and dry simple. And I did all that without one four-letter word coming out. I'm proud of myself, Paul.
I believe when we were in pre-show, you said I don't give a Frankfurter what a lot of people say. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But thank you for helping us keep our PG rating.
One flying Frankfurter. I don't care.
I am going to say this. I was not there. I was not in this officer's shoes. I do know that this person served as a police officer for a number of, I think 30 years before he became a school resource officer. So he's got a lot of background in policing. Generally, police run toward the sound of the guns. What I saw there was somebody dropping a load, turning around and running away.
Dropping the load in their pants? Is that where
Yes.
you're going with that?
Yes.
Okay. Because I concur with that. I just, I've gone through faster classes. I've gone through emergency classes. I have, you know, I get it. When you sign up, there are things that you agree to that you know that it is not pretty, but it is your responsibility. And you're the adult in the room, and your job is to make sure that everyone under your control comes out alive.
Yeah. And I don't want to beat on this drum too loudly, other than just to say,
5 years.
yeah, it's taken 5 years to get these charges to come up, and I would not be surprised if it takes a year or two to get this through court and to find out whether this guy is going to get a slap on the wrist or not. Because let's be frank,
So are they just
that's all
hoping
he's going
he's
to
going
get.
to? Are they just hoping he's going to die of old age beforehand so that they don't have to make a decision? I don't get it. I
Yeah.
absolutely do not get it.
And he's not he had 30 years law enforcement experience as of when this story was written. He's 60, so the guy reasonably could live another 20 to 25 years.
Well, I'm hoping it's 95 years in prison. That's what I'm hoping.
Well, 95 years divide by 3, which is what I think Florida does for parole availability. That would mean
Okay,
he's available.
62 years or 32 years.
Yeah, so he'd be at 30 years. He'd be available,
Yeah.
eligible for parole.
Okay, that's acceptable.
Okay.
I'll take that.
Next story I want to get to, and this is probably going to take the rest of our time we have. California State Senate has passed a bill that would require microstamping on all new pistols sold in the state. Passed by a 29-10 vote on May 24th. Goes to the Assembly. The Encinitas, I'm trying to get through. The bill sponsor, who's from Encinitas, argues that the bill simply puts to use readily available technology to help law enforcement catch criminals by banning all sales or transfers of any semi-automatic pistol after July 2027, unless it has been verified as having a microstamping enabled action. Anyway, I want to, Amanda, in your previous career, you were an engineer, and you part of your engineering duties and what that company did was stamping forms into metal. And
Correct.
we've discussed this at least on Polite Society, if not here, that microstamping does not work, cannot work, will never work because files are too available, because stamping is a process where you deform metal, and even a softer metal will deform the harder metal just a little bit. Something that tiny, it doesn't take much more than a little bit to make it illegible.
Think of it this way. Look at the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
What made the Grand Canyon grand? It was water.
It wasn't.
Water that was a whole lot softer than the rock.
Yeah.
It was water that may have a little bit of rock in it. Water that had little specks of rock going by. But it was water that wore away the rock. Okay? So if you use that concept, that obviously water is softer than metal, or than rock. So now you're looking at hard metal versus softer metal. It's going to be the same kind of thing. Any little bit of dirt, any little bit of grit, any little bit of whatever is going to work with the softer metal to abrade the harder metal to where it's gone. It's really that simple. So if you nick it, you hit it, you dent it, all of a sudden it's going to be gone. Think about how many things that you have bought that have a serial number stamped in it, that's on like a little plate, or it's on something that's in a casting, or it's in a stamping, and you're squinting and looking at it and you're like, I can see the 3 really good, but I can't tell if that's a 4 or a 7, right? Why can't you see it? Because it started to wear away. And it's big. So most of the time you're talking about letters that are 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch long, tall. A micro-stamped multiple digit on something as small as a firing pin. The technology exists to laser engrave it, but your laser is going to have to be really damn fast if it's going to laser engrave something on the bullet on its way out.
Yes.
But that's going to be the only way that you can get a clear number on something that's exiting the firearm.
And let's look at so this would be a serialized number, so it would be unique for each handgun, according to California law. How many handguns do you think are in California? I'm going to guess north of 5 million just in California.
So how many digits on that firing pin?
Yeah, and you can only go, there are only 9. If you're going to do numbers only, there's only 9 digits. If you're going to be doing numbers and letters, we're at, well, I'm sorry, there are 10
shorter,
digits,
yeah.
1 to 0 to 9, and there are 26 letters, so add the 10. So there's 36 combinations if you include letters and numbers. And
Except they don't typically then use Q or O or 0
yeah,
because they all start to look alike. So in a couple of them, they're similar enough that they pull them out of the mix. But yeah,
you're still
I
looking.
mean, you're in the general gist.
You're still looking at a 6 or 7 digit long serial number for each handgun
On a firing pin. So pick up your pen and look at the point of it and say, can you get 6 or 7 digits on there?
Get that really close. So
Really?
yeah,
Right? I mean, you're looking at it. There's no freaking way.
yeah, it's
Not in the technology we currently have. But
and not in the technology we're going to have before 2027, which is only 2.5 years away.
Right. It's only like half a lawsuit thing for Parkland or something. We still have way more time. No, but when California makes these statements, then they say, well, we're just doing this because we're going to write this law based on readily available technology. Once before in my career, I worked in catalytic converters. California wrote the entire air emission standards, the Zero Lev, ULEV air emission standards, off of a singular bench model sample made in Hiram, Ohio. My bench, my sample, my town, my company, and they wrote the entire air emission standards. And then all the car companies come knocking on our door and said, oh, well, California said you could do it. Dude, I could do one. And one took me a while. So if you want 1 car a week coming out, we're good. But anything more than that, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
California is doing it again.
All right, let me get a couple comments in here real quick. Going back to the Facebook side and talking about the legal issues with that officer, the school resource officers. Larry says, my guess it will not be going anywhere. This is a political issue, not a criminal issue. In gun-hating police, God, let me go over here because it's really hard to read on the screen.
In gun-hating, police-loving Broward County.
Yeah. The law has nothing to do with it. What perspective has to be viewed is the Fort Lauderdale fiasco, where BSO again failed to do its job.
Yeah.
And then he also on the California, they do it on printed circuits.
They do.
So,
it's a completely different thing on a printed circuit board than it is on, because that's ink.
yeah.
And it's printed on a printed circuit.
And if it takes a second and a half to do it, it's no big deal.
Correct. It is not a transfer stamp like they're saying from a firing pin. That's the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. We are right down near the end of the show. Amanda, before we take off, anything you want to plug today?
Well, I just want to say that I'm headed next week to DC and to the NRA offices for NRA Board of Directors School, and so that's kind of cool. And check out Eye on the Target Radio with Rob and I. We do that every Sunday night, and it's a pretty. If I say so myself, it's a pretty good show. So there you go.
I would agree with that. And I think you've had. Now, I think your video producer you've had is pretty darn cool too. So
yeah, I've heard that.
Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Podcast listeners, thank you for listening. Please do consider, if you're a podcast listener, come joining us sometime. We are live at 6 p.m. Monday through Friday on YouTube, Facebook, and pretty much anywhere else you can get you can watch live video. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see